By their very nature and style, the Gen Z protests in June this year were nothing the country has ever witnessed. Dubbed fearless, tribeless and leaderless, the protests were populated by young men and women who for the first time were taking a stand against what they felt were unjust government policies. Many paid the ultimate price, felled by the gun. Despite being celebrated as revolution heroes, their families have been left with overwhelming emotional pain and continue to navigate the complex maze of justice. Serfine Achieng Ouma, as promised, takes you into the depth of grief of those who lost their loved ones during the protests in our special feature tonight, Graves of Protest. Kisekini village in Kadhiani, Machakos County. Grief still grips the family of Erickson Chalo Mutisia, a 25-year-old man who lost his life during the anti-finance bill demonstrations in Nairobi in June this year. His family shows us the spot where he was buried, secured with this dry, thorny plantation, as it is the only reminder of a man they describe as the joy bringer of the Mutisia's family. The patriarch of the family, Mzee Johnston Mutisia, remembers how shattered he was on receiving the call about the death of his son.
Huyo kijana alipochukua simu akaniambia, wewe ndio baba Eric? Nikamwambia ndio. Hey baba, pole sana, Eric ashapumzika. Nikamuuliza amepumzika aje? Akaniambia, kijana wako tulikuwa maandamano na alipigwa risasi, ni wakati alipopigwa risasi akaanguka chini.
Hatujui nini ilifanyika. Juu lastly kumuona kwa video tulimuona akidance tu peke yake. After 15 minutes alikuwa ameshashutiwa.
News that came as a shock to his only sister Anna, who was in Saudi Arabia at the time. Her pain exacerbated by the fact that she could not even make it back on time for the burial.
Kutoka nje akaniambia nisilie, nijitie nguvu, nikamuliza nini imehappen. Akaniambia Eric ametuacha, nikamuliza eti nini. Akaniambia Eric ametuacha. Nikamuliza tunasema nini, nikamuliza mara tatu tunasema nini. Bradhangu akaniambia ametuacha, na nikamuliza na mamangu ako wapi, akaniambia ako nje.
Eric was Mzee Mutisia's second born, a young, vibrant man who was operating a butchery in Nairobi as he pushed his dream to secure employment abroad.
Alikuwa anauza pork meat ya kawaida. Alikuwa ametuahidi vitu nyingi sana juu alikuwa kijana mwenye bidii.
Eric angekuwa ako mbali sana kwa sababu alikuwa ameniambia ataenda US na aanze kazi huko na maisha yetu mbatu ikuwe mzuri.
So nimepoteza tu brother yangu mwenye nilikuwa nampenda sana.
Several kilometers away in Kamuthanga village in Machakos County, the family of Rex Kik Masai, the first Gen Z protester to be shot, tends to his grave. Rex was buried in an emotional send-off by friends, family and relatives, all of who were united in their condemnation of the violation of his right to life.
Justice for Rex!
More than 5 months later, his family is still grieving.
Walipofika Kimathi Street, kukawa na ile rabsha wakatupiwa tear gas, wakapotelea na njia. So mwenzake alipokimbia kufika mbele kuangalia mwenzake amuoni, akawa ni kama anarudi nyuma. Kuangalia akapata mahali watu wamekaa chini, wanaangalia mtu, ikawa ni ule Rex amekaa mahali chini, alikuwa amepigwa risasi.
The last moments of Rex were captured on a video that went viral, showing how he met his untimely death after being shot by an unknown police officer amidst a crowd of protesters who were escaping tear gas canisters that had been lobbed along Kimathi Street.
Wakati walipofikia askari wakaomba msaada, askari awasaidie kwa mwenzao anatokwa na damu na amepigwa risasi. Askari jawabu aliwapa ni mwache akufe huko. Tunawataka wengine, huyo ni wa kwanza.
The search for justice has been difficult for Rex's family. On the 11th of December 2024, police officer Isaiah Murari found himself in a difficult situation as he tried to explain to the court whether he was involved in Rex's death.
What would your comment be to the allegations that you may have been the one who fired the fatal shot?
I don't know the reason why I was mentioned, and I was not armed with a gun that can fire to kill someone.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was the first public hearing on the investigation into who shot Rex. But as his family waits for the next court session on 5th February next year, several other families have been left in the dark, dreams of ever getting justice fading by the day.
President alikuwa amesema majina zote zipelekwe na majina zilipelekwa na kutoka hapo wamenyamaza, hakuna kitu hata inaendelea.
Nika serikali ilisahau. Hatujui kama kuna hope isipokuwa Mungu aingililie.
On the 25th of June 2024, the contentious Finance Bill 2024 was passed in Parliament, and immediately thousands of protesters stormed Parliament buildings in what seemed like a fierce expression of their displeasure and disappointment in their representatives. The protest escalated when the protesters set part of the building on fire. The police responded by shooting at the protesters. President William Ruto withdrew the unpopular tax legislation the following day amidst a dark cloud that covered the entire nation. Several young lives had been lost in the Parliament shootout, with families thrust deep into mourning. In Karambaini village in Kiambu County lies the grave of Evans Kiratu Karobia, which is just next to the main house. Evans was killed on 20th of June 2024 at the height of the Gen Z protest. He was reportedly rushed to hospital by a Good Samaritan who found him writhing in pain after he was hit by a tear gas canister on his private parts.
Kifo cha Evans kilinipata kwa njia ingine mbaya sana.
The family still insists that their son arrived at the hospital alive, with concern now being why they were forced to take a contrary report.
Good Samaritan alichukua video za Evans. Na juu niko nazo unaweza hata ona huko ni hospitali Kenyatta, akiwa kwa ile kitanda, akianza akilia hapo na uchungu. So alipokelewa akiwa uhai.
To mark 1 month of silence in the quest for justice for the fallen victims of the deadly June protest, on 25th of July 2024, a group of activists and human rights advocates led family members of the victims in a march to Parliament, hoping to lay flowers in what they termed as a gesture of remembrance of the bravery and sacrifice of the young people. The protesters also wanted to petition the office of the president to push for justice for those who had been brutally killed. Hannah Wanjiru, Evans Kiratu's mother, was among the protesters, armed with nothing but rage and the pain of losing her 21-year-old son. Their plea for justice and answers was, however, met with the wrath of security agencies who lobbed tear gas canisters
at the protesters and detained several people. Some of Evans's relatives, including his auntie Rachel Wanjiru, were slapped with detention for demanding justice after the death of their kin.
Hata hiyo petition hatukupeleka. Walitufamia wakafanya mambo mbaya sana. Life bullets hizo vikonde zilianguka kando yangu mbili mpaka nikalala chini. Ndio sasa wakaweza kunishika na kunipeleka ndani.
One by one, the sons and daughters of the land went down, fallen for their bravery to change their country. No answers, no arrests, and no prosecution.
They are also a generation that I really admire for how much they continue to pursue justice for the people whose blood was spilled. This government continues to underestimate that. But until there is justice for the 60 freedom fighters who took to the streets and were murdered, the youth have not forgotten. It doesn't matter what speeches you give.
Kenyan authorities must conduct prompt, thorough, and independent investigations into all human rights violations committed in the context of the protests.
Pressure has been mounting on the President William Ruto-led Kenya Kwanza administration to act swiftly on demands for justice for the victims of police brutality. The head of state, during the latest State of the Nation address, challenged members of the public with information on any police officer to be implicated to come forth.
I condemn any excessive or extrajudicial action which puts the life and liberty of any person at risk, including disappearances and threats to life.
The real numbers of those who died is yet to come to the fore. Reports from several human rights groups in September placed the death toll at 61. However, while appearing before the National Assembly Committee on Administration and Internal Security, Deputy President Kithure Kindiki, then serving as Interior Cabinet Secretary, disputed the reports, insisting that 42 people lost their lives as a result of the Gen Z-led protests. The variance notwithstanding, one life lost was and remains too many. Serfine Achieng Ouma, Citizen TV.